Let's bring in Nabila Ramdani, the Middle East journalist and Monocle regular. Nabila, just listening to that account from Jessica there, it sounds like complete chaos. What's your take on the situation?
Well, absolutely, and this is very much a clear example of how a revolution for democracy does not immediately deliver. And Libya is sadly, as you said, in a situation of absolute chaos at the moment, and institutional problems, and indeed law and order problems like these, lead the long list of challenges which the country's new leaders have to face. Democratic institutions in Libya, including the newly elected General National Congress, mean absolutely nothing if security cannot be maintained. And cutting through the technical reasons for what is happening in the new Congress, this is a crisis in a fledgling democracy, and one which I fear is set to be repeated many times over before Libya settles down to representative democracy.
Indeed, and Jessica was talking about the timing not being right, but more than that, had the minister resigned, what kind of message would that have sent out?
Well, clearly, behind all this is really the fear of all powerful militias at the moment, which are armed to the teeth and hold an awful lot of power, to lose that power to a democratic institution like the Congress. And you cannot have, in a democracy, laws being passed literally under duress. And dare I say, the demands being made by those militias are very unrealistic. This idea that, Libya should try to get rid of the entire Gaddafi era is an impossible task, and indeed an absurd one. Gaddafi ruled for more than 4 decades, and hundreds of thousands of decent people had no option but to work within the regime and to try to make the best of their lives given the circumstances. Remember, too, that Libya is a small country by population, only 6.5 million people. And Libya at the moment needs technocrats to manage the country. And most of Gaddafi-era officials were actually trained abroad in renowned institutions, Ivy League universities in the US, for example. So earlier, when the new regime came in, when the new government came in, there were talks of an amnesty for everyone. And that would have included the rebels who were involved in all sorts of atrocities and indeed war crimes during the conflict. And I think that the whole population cannot be written off. Savagery on both sides is what characterizes civil wars, which is what happened in Libya. So I think an amnesty would have been a much more inclusive option, a more pragmatic and realistic solution to reconcile differences.
Nabila, staying with you, Jessica mentioned that the people outside these ministries are from all over. And as everybody has mentioned, none of them are in agreement. To what degree is there a fear of extremism that could be bringing these groups together?
Well, to a large degree, as has been illustrated throughout the conflict, one of the ironies which happened during the conflict in Libya is that the very jihadists that had been released from Gaddafi's jail by his then reformist son, Saif al-Islam, were those who were fighting the hardest during the conflict and who indeed, ended eventually Gaddafi's rules. And this has been illustrated spectacularly and indeed tragically by the murder of the US ambassador to Libya, along with colleagues, by very nasty elements. Those elements are still there. They are the ones who have the weapons, and they are the ones who are calling all the shots. And I think the defense minister was right when he said that such demands by armed groups and indeed attacks on government ministries are an assault on democracy.